So in video production, there is one item that you will eventually probably run into that is very useful, and it is a monitor slash external recorder. Now there's many brands that make these monitors slash external recorders, one of the most notable ones being Atomos. Now, one of the most popular Atomos monitor recorders is the Atomos Ninja. The Ninja 5 now is what they're on, and this thing is a beast. It can help you monitor your video, help you with vector scopes, let you see your exposure and focus peaking and all of that fun stuff. Plus, you can record to an external SSD mounted on the back of the recorder, and then that kind of unlocks some hidden power that most cameras have. On the Sonys, you don't get a lot of power, but you can move up your recording from 420 to 422, and then on some other cameras you can change it to 10-bit when recording externally. Beside the point, monitors slash external recorders are a very useful tool in the film and production industry. Like I said, the Ninja 5 is going to be one of the most popular ones. Personally, I use the Atomos Shinobi. Now today, this is what we're going to be talking about, and this monitor is very similar to the Atomos Ninja, minus the external recording. So we're going to talk about all the features in this and why this is probably your best bet if you're doing YouTube or very small video production. Now, personally, I don't do a lot of external recording with my videos, mostly because a lot of them go up on YouTube and I don't need the higher recording bit rates or depth in my color. A lot of times I'm shooting on the standard profile anyway, so I don't need any of the color grading tools. However, especially shooting on an A7 III and some of the other Sonys, I don't have a flip out screen to see what I'm recording or monitor if I'm in the shot or if I'm in focus. So that brings up a few options. You can either use the Sony Imaging Edge app to monitor your video, or you can use some sort of external recorder. Now, I used to use the Imaging Edge app and it worked okay, but one of the issues with it was that it was super laggy because it connected via Wi-Fi, and it just wasn't very easy to see if you were in focus or if you were exposed correctly because you were using your phone screen to monitor those things. So recently I started using the Atomos Shinobi as my external monitor, and it has made things so much easier, and I don't know how I lived without one of these beforehand. Now, like I said, the Shinobi doesn't record externally. It is strictly a monitor, so you're losing a lot of functionality for the reasons that people buy the Ninja, but the reason I use the Shinobi is, again, I don't use any of those recording functions. So, minus the recording functions, the Shinobi is very similar to the Ninja series in that it has an amazing display, hooks in HDMI, uses the same batteries, it's the same form factor, it pretty much has the same screen. It also has all of the same functionality in the device as it runs on the same Atom OS that the Ninja uses. And that's Atomos's OS, if you will, kind of like Apple iOS or Android OS. Anyway, beside the point, we are going to run through a few of the functions of the Atomos Shinobi today, just to show you all the functionality that this little beast has and how it can be very useful for somebody who just needs the monitoring capability. So let's jump right in. So first and foremost, this thing has a 5.2-inch display. It is around 1,000 nits of brightness, which is a ton compared to your phone or even your camera monitor. So when you're out in bright daylight, this is a very helpful function. Also, I just love that you can put the monitor on top and tilt it up so you don't have to be looking at the tiny screen on the back when you're trying to shoot in weird angles. It definitely helps out a ton. Now, while this is a 4K monitor, the resolution is actually 1920 by 1080, but on such a small screen, you really wouldn't be able to tell much of a difference. It still looks phenomenal, much better than your camera's monitor. So I'm not complaining there, but it isn't actually a 4K monitor, but it can take in a 4K signal, and you can tell on the screen when you're recording in 4K or 1080 because you can still see the difference upscaled to an extent. Now, like I said previously, this runs Atomos's Atom OS as its operating system. That brings up a ton of awesome functionality, so we'll jump down to the screen on the Shinobi and go through some of the functions. So this is just the screen with nothing on it, just as a monitor right now. So when you tap on the screen, you're going to see the menu pop up, and you have a ton of options on the top and the bottom, but we'll start down here. So first and foremost, you have all of your waveforms, your histograms, your vector scopes. So you have multiple options, and then inside of those options, you can change how it is viewed. So if we move down here, you can change that, and you can also tap on it to get a little bit different results in terms of color overlays. So this one, there we go. And then you move in, you have the color waveform, and then it has all of these different options for you to choose. And then so you have all of those individual options that you can click through on the bottom, but then you also have this view right here where it pops up your screen up in the left hand corner, and then you have all of your monitoring capabilities, your waveform, vector scopes, and all that along the sides, so that you can kind of have a full view of everything if you need to be very specific as to what you're recording and the color and the exposure. And this helps a lot when recording in log formats, so that you can see where you are if you're doing a certain exposure technique like ETTR, exposed to the right, which is how some people recommend you do it when you are using custom LUTs. So, and then beside that, you have your focus peaking. So if I click that, you can see that I have that red that pops on to show me what is in focus. Then you also have zebras right here. I don't believe anything is overexposed, but if I were to open up my aperture and there, so as I open up my exposure a little bit, you can see the zebras in the background going over here in the corner, not very well, but it's there. So, and then beside your zebras, you have false color, which is a really cool function to see if you are exposed correctly. I don't use false color a ton, but it is there, and it's very functional if you like to use that. Then there's also, beside that, you can turn off the color, make it black and white. This is helpful when trying to see the noise in your shot. It's a lot easier to see noise in a shot with just a black and white image. Then you have your punch in if you want to zoom in to make sure that you're in focus. You can move that around, and then you move over, you can have a 4x zoom as well. It's grayed out for me. I'm not entirely sure what the reason for that is. It's probably the resolution I'm recording in. Beside that, you can go to different aspect ratios if you want to record in a wide screen format, or let's say like a 4x3, it can cut it off and show you where your shot's going to be for when you're editing that as well. Now you have this function here, which I'm going to be very honest, I'm not entirely sure what this does here. It's pulling up the yellow boxes right there. I've never seen that on anything else, so we're going to skip that for now. If you know what it is, leave it down in the comments, but I haven't found any reason to use that. And then so the last function you have on here at the bottom is this Anamorphic D Squeeze. So if you see when I click that, it makes my image look very warped. If you were using an anamorphic lens that would compress your image in, then you would want to click that, and it can de-squeeze it to show you what your image is going to look like after it's de-squeezed in your editing software. So that's a really cool function as well. And so that's going to cover everything on that bottom menu. Now you can dive deeper into the menus as well. Click at the top here. You have a few different options. So we'll start over here with the waveform. You can change the settings of your waveform, opacity, brightness, and then if it's on the side, the bottom, or full screen. You have your focus peaking options where you can change how it looks. So if we turn focus peaking on, you can turn it to black and white so that you can see the focusing color a little bit better, or you can turn off all color except for the focusing color to make it a little bit easier to see as well. You can also change the color of your focus peaking, so purple, pink, teal, green, yellow, red, white. I like to keep it on red. That's just what I've always used. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Then you also can decide how intense you want your focus peaking. I leave that on the highest setting just so I can see it a little bit easier. Moving on, the next screen on there is going to be your zebra menu. In the zebra menu, you can set the threshold, so how overexposed it needs to be before it starts to peak and show those zebras. So if I were to turn on my zebras, I turn the threshold down, you can see it's actually peaking on my face a little bit. But since I know I'm not really overexposed there, I'll turn that back up to around 70, 73. Next, you have your Lut menu. Now, the cool thing about the Shinobi is even though it doesn't do external recording, they still add in the Lut feature. So if you are recording in a flat profile like log or HLG, Cine. You can add in LUTs on the recorder via an SD card on the side. You can load up 8 at a time, and then you can apply those so that when you're recording, you can kind of see what it's going to look like when the footage is normalized. So you're not just looking at a flat picture on your monitor, which makes it sometimes a little hard to really get the idea of what it's going to look like in post after you edit and color grade. So that's a really cool feature. We move over to the monitor section. This is just going to let you kind of decide how you want to view your image. So right now it's on native. If I had a LUT selected, I could click LUT. You see it kind of makes the picture really crappy right now. It's because I'm not shooting in log, so the LUT doesn't work right. But that's how you'll turn on the LUT if you have it selected. Then you can also come over here and you can actually flip your image. So because this monitor is made for vloggers and content creators and it's kind of stripped down, they add in a flip horizontally or vertically. You flip it sideways, so if you look, if I were to flip the monitor normally, it would look like I'm going the opposite way than I actually am moving. So if you click that flip button, now it kind of acts like a screen on a camera would, or like a flip out screen on like the ZV-1 or on a Canon, where it flips the picture so it looks more realistic. And you can also flip the image upside down in case you had this thing mounted in a weird way. So you have a lot of different options for using this monitor as well. Now we move over to the display. You can mess with the backlight, the lift, the gamut, and the gain just in case you want to calibrate it a little different. I usually don't touch those. I just kind of leave them where they are. Sometimes I'll mess with the backlight depending on my situation, but I haven't found a need to really mess with those settings. It usually works perfectly fine how it is, so I just leave it be. Now, one of the last menus here is going to be up in the left-hand corner. Now, if you are recording in a HLG or log format, you can actually turn this on, click your camera. So it has anything from Red to Sony, Fujifilm, Nikon, Sony, Ari. Did I say Sony twice? I did. And then you can pick HLG or S-Log and then what color space you're in. And that will kind of help it show those colors correctly on the monitor when it moves to the camera output and what you're recording in. I usually keep that off. If you're using the LUTs correctly and with your log, it doesn't really make a huge difference. I've looked into it a little bit and I find it best to just keep it off, but you do have the option to match the camera for correct image processing. Since we're not recording on here, it's not that big of a deal, so I leave that be. You can monitor the audio coming out of the headphone jack on the side. You have your battery level as well, and then just the info on your recorder, device ID, the version, and the build. Also your factory reset button right there as well. And with that, that is kind of a whole run through of the monitor. Now you can turn off everything if you just want to see your image and you don't want to use any of the special features built in. I usually have it just running on the focus peaking and occasionally the zebras so that I can make sure that everything is exposed correctly. Other than that, I don't use a ton of the other functions. If I am shooting in log, I will load on the LUTs that I use onto the recorder just so I can normalize the image a little bit to see how I'm looking and how I will look in post. So I use this thing as just a strict monitor usually, and it does that great. It does exactly what I want, and the color and the image coming out of this is amazing. So if you want a monitor and you don't want the external recording function, you can not spend $600, cut that in half and spend $300 and get an amazing monitor from Atomos. Again, it's called the Shinobi. This is probably a really good option for content creators who won't be doing a lot of professional film work. Now, the Ninja is obviously a better option if you have any possibility of using the external recording functions. Just go and get the Ninja. It does pretty much all the same things that the Shinobi does plus the recording. I just personally don't use those, and if I really need them, I can rent the Atomos Ninja from my local camera store. So I'd rather use the Shinobi as my run and gun. Plus, it's a little bit lighter, so it makes it a little easier to carry around and throw in my bag without adding too much weight. But anyway, that is going to really be it. I wanted to do a little run through of the Shinobi. I think this is probably one of the coolest pieces of gear that I've gotten recently, and I love using this thing. It makes recording these videos so much easier and less stress in thinking, am I in focus? Am I exposed correctly? A lot of times I would just set the camera and sit in front of it and hope that it looks good. Now I can look at this monitor and really know that everything is looking good. Like I said, even with the Sony Imaging Edge app, it was always kind of a gamble because it's laggy. You never really know if you're in focus, and the exposure on your phone isn't as accurate as something like this Shinobi monitor. This is what this is made for. So that is super cool. So if you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you want me to do a more in-depth video on how I use this monitor and some of the setups I use in my rig, I can definitely do that as well. But if you like this video, give it a thumbs up down below. And if you enjoy camera tech and filmmaking, think about hitting that subscribe button down below. If not, that's cool too. But I will see you guys in the next video.